Hello and welcome to the Ask the Industry podcast, episode 93. I'm comedian Simon Caine, and for those of you new to the show, this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, radio, and today, agents. I don't know why my voice went weird then. Agents. This podcast is a special one. I recorded it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival 2017. It was in the Sweets venue in the Grassmarket. Thank you very much to JD Henshaw and the entire Sweets team for helping me put this one on. I got three agents in a room to discuss their thoughts and their opinions on everything that you submitted as a question, but everything that we could possibly cover to do with representation, finding the right agent, finding the right people to work with, finding the right way of approaching agents, finding everything you could possibly imagine that would be to do with finding yourself some sort of representation, when you should do it, how you should do it, why you should not do it a certain way, issues, mistakes, everything people make. I'm not going to introduce any of the guests because I get them to do that themselves on the pod. I found that easier to do because it means you can identify their voices. So I'll be very quick with this intro. All I'll say is if you're new here, please do hit that subscribe button. If you're old here, please do give us an honest review in iTunes. And either way, please do consider joining the Facebook group. It's called Ask the Industry Podcast and it's on Facebook, of course. But now, without any more delays, this is our fourth live panel.
Hello, I'm Andy Townsend. I run a company called TGA, which is a talent management company, a small talent management company, not a boutique talent management company. It's a word I don't like for various neurotic reasons. We represent a range of comedians and TV presenters, including people like Sean Kelly from Storage Hunters, Perrier Award winner Brendan Burns, some people called the Thinking Drinkers. We're at the Edinburgh Festival. I've got 11 of my acts performing at the festival this year, doing 16 shows.
Hi, I'm Katya Balfour-Lynn. I work for United Agents and I work in live.
I'm Chris Lander. I work for Phil Mcintyre Management. We are a management company looking after acts. I've got 11 acts up at the Fringe this year. I've got 18 acts in total. I look after the kind of up and coming acts on our roster. We also have another side of our agency that look after some larger profile acts. We also have a live department who promote tours, etc. And we also have a TV department who make TV shows. But I specifically look after young up and coming comics, and thankfully some of them have come up at the moment, which is good.
So first question would be, why don't you like the word boutique? Because that feels really problematic, and like we should get that out of the way early. So
I don't know. It's just it's sort of me. It sits in the same place as artisan. It just kind of It's just like if you're a small agency, just say you're a small agency. That's fine. Right. Not everyone is a massive organisation. You can be small. That's okay. Be happy with being small. Hopefully, if you want to be bigger, then you can grow to be bigger. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think that point on you can do great things with small agencies, I absolutely agree is the right thing, because I think I think the big behemoth agencies, and there are, they have their strengths, but those ones with 150 acts across lots of different boards, they don't. I think there's a lot of dynamism in small agencies. I think where you can be. Sorry, the coffee has just arrived.
I can remember if you got sugar and milk.
Thank you very much.
Can hear a frisson of excitement around the room. It's Monday morning.
I think that's a look. I think that's very interesting. I think there's something in that, because we're a smallish agency. Like we've only got 8 people work for our agency, and it's quite but we do. We started off small type thing.
Yeah, definitely. The next question was going to be where you see your agency fitting in with the industry as a whole, what you do differently and why you think it needed to either start or exist in the world as it is right now.
Because I got asked to start it. It's a long convoluted story. I got asked, which I won't. This is just too dull. I used to work in the music industry, used to work in the film industry, and at various points in my music industry career, I worked on the record label side. Various people had said to me, "Oh, you'd be great in management because you're great working with the talent. The talent like you definitely have a connection with the talent, etc., etc., etc." And I'd avoided it for years for various reasons, because in the music industry, you're dealing with bands, which means that you've generally got a number of personalities to deal with, and all of the friction and tension and foolishness that kind of comes with that. And I had a good friend who was managing a very popular rock band who will become nameless, or will remain nameless, and I would speak to him on a regular basis, and he was like, "Oh, guess what happened to me last night?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I got a call at 4:30 a.m. from one of my band members demanding someone go and get them some more cocaine." And I was just like, "Yeah, I don't want to mess about with that kind of foolishness." But 3 or 4 years ago, I got asked by someone to come in and Neil Warnock, who's a music industry guy, who was setting up a comedy department at his company, and he asked me would I come in and set that up for him, which I did. And then that process has left me a year ago to leaving that company and setting up TGA. Went out on my own because I wanted more freedom, and I like working in a smaller company and having more control over what I do.
Okay.
I feel like when I first met you, you were at Killy. It's interesting because I do feel like you were that person that the acts would come to, and it just seemed quite natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, see, at Killy I was a promoter, and
I think a lot of agents start as promoters.
I mean,
that's quickly realise they're out of being
people. I got asked to do a talk at a college recently, talking about being an entrepreneur, and and just there was these kids were on a business course. Kids, what a patronising thing to say. They were 20 on this kind of business course, and someone asked about how you learn stuff and kind of learning curves and all that sort of thing. And I just talked about my experience at Killy, and it's like that was a fucking vertical learning curve at certain points, because I didn't have a massive promoting background, but went in there and picked up Paul Hollywood, not a comedy thing, and did 60 dates with Paul Hollywood, and that was massive.
Well, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But that that genuinely nearly broke me, and it's just that sort of thing where I'm not a natural gambler. Promoting is in essence about gambling, 100%. And you can win big, but you can lose big. And that Hollywood tour was fine in the end, but at certain points, I was just looking at figures and going, "Oh my Christ!" At a certain point, I was spending 4 hours a day on Excel sheets, just kind of doing that, and I was just like, in the end, this just isn't for me. It's just not much fun. We all know that the kind of the stresses and strains of being an agent, but for all of that, I'm way happier doing what I do now.
I think promoters and agents are slightly different types of the same breed. Like, do you know what I mean? I think they're slightly different. Like, there's people, it's because we're obviously a big promoters as well on the other side of the desk from me. And those people like Amy and Ed, and they are very 100% about the figures and about the numbers and checking ticket sales and loving crowds and stuff like that. And they sometimes look at what I have to do as a manager and an agent, and they go, "No thanks." So we are equally as terrified of that thing. And
that was the thing that struck me, because prior to that, obviously, I'd come from a content background. I had set up a art house DVD label, and then I worked at PIAS on their kind of content side. And you work in content, and you acquire or license a bit of content, and you license that for a long period of time, for 10 or 15 years or whatever, and you release that content. If you don't make money from that content initially, you have a long period of time in which to amortise any losses and pick up some, I don't know, maybe a TV sale in Australia or whatever. There's a way of doing that. Whereas you're a promoter, if you aren't selling tickets, you're not selling tickets, and the money isn't coming in, and it's like the gig is on, it's on that day, and if it hasn't sold, it hasn't sold, and that's two very different mindsets, and trying to switch from one to the other, I found quite difficult.
Yeah, I started off in live. I started, and this isn't unusual, I started off as a terrible comedian for agents. And I think
everyone starts as a terrible
comedian. Oh, yeah, I mean,
Nobody starts well.
I know that, but I think I brought a proper special meaning to the word terrible comedian. I think I wanted to do it because I fell into it because I've always loved comedy. I was always a geek about comedy, really nerd. Like, everyone else was like recording Peel sessions. I was like listening to prior LPs and stuff like that. And I just wanted to be involved in it. I wanted to be part of the gang and, be part of that kind of, the excitement of comedy. And the first entry level when you don't know anything about the industry, you don't know there's an industry, you don't know that there's people like us who work in it, and there's actually, it's a job and stuff. And you know, I went and did open spots in Manchester and did King Gong and did all of that stuff. Then went to uni and I actually went and did a PhD, and I was setting up
PhD in what?
Molecular immunology.
What? Oh, wow.
PhD, self-signalling in T cells was my at Cambridge. I don't know how I got in there. Administrative error, I think, mainly. But yeah, set up a gig while I was there.
I wasn't expecting that.
No, it's no offence. No, it's fine. Yeah, it was I tell you, my mum was like, "Hang on, you've done 8 years in academia, and now you're quitting to go and work for a comedy agency. What the hell are you doing?" Anyway, but no, I'm glad, much happier then. And
it's like every comedian's mum, you've done a
degree.
Why are you fucking giving it up now?
I think that's a universal things of mums going, what? But yeah, so I set up a gig while I was there, because I used to work for a music promotions company in Manchester when I was a student, but that was flyering and bill postering and all that type of stuff, just to keep me in beer and pot noodles while I was at uni. And went to uni, set up a gig, so I knew how to promote gigs because I'd learnt a bit about it, and nobody in Cambridge did know how to promote gigs, especially stand-up gigs, because I was a stand-up fan, and a lot of Footlightsy type stuff was all sketch, and there's nothing wrong with that. Footlights are amazing, and what an institution. But so I started running a gig, and then from there it kind of took off, that gig, and I wasn't having a great time on my PhD, and I was booking headliners for the show through various agents, and I got to know a couple of agents, and then I booked Simon Munnery for Avalon, and got drunk with the booker, and went, "Oh, how do you do your job?" Like, "God, I can't believe you work in comedy. That's really interesting." And she went, "Oh, we might have a space. Like, someone's leaving. Come and take a punt." So I did. Went over there, and then had a few great years at Avalon, working in their live department. Phil Mcintyre as an agency, they had some really big acts, so Ben Elton, Peter Kay, John Cleese, Ade Edmondson, Victoria Wood, and oh God, I hope I don't miss someone out.
You're going to get an angry
Carolina Hearn and Craig Cash. But those guys, they were, they are legends, but they're not they weren't at that point constantly working every year. You know what I mean? Like, they had that ability that they could take time off and be able to think. So Phil just, they said, actually, we need some new blood in the agency. Let's get some youngsters up, in part to help support our touring side, because we generate acts into our touring side and get them off get them touring as quickly as possible. And from there it all kind of spiraled, and then they brought me in. I was an agent. I became an agent, had an Edinburgh here. I went to there in July, came here with no clients, and then came back with 5, and from then it all spiraled. Yeah, James Acaster was my first client, and from then on it all went quite well. So
good choice.
It was not a bad one off the gate.
Nice spot.
It was. So and he said, he's been a joy, obviously, to work with. So so that's how I got into it. It's a bit of a weird route, but
it is but it can only be a weird route, I think, because there's no school. There's no school. There's no structure.
It's not like we've gone and got an MBA in agenting.
Friends of mine who don't know the industry, they see, I don't know, Peter Kay doing the O2 and just big tours, or McIntyre being at the O2 for 7 years or whatever it is, and they perceive as comedy as this massive behemoth industry, and I think they sort of think of it as the music industry, and you kind of used to talk to them and go, well, actually no, it's like a cottage industry. It's a cottage industry that generates a lot of revenue, but actually as a thing, and there's no structure, there's no way in, and people always say, "Oh, how did you do that?" And I go, the genuine answer as to where I am now is because when I was at school in the sixth form, I worked in Cornwall in the deep past. I worked for what was then the equivalent of B&Q in their warehouse, and because I worked in the warehouse, they gave me a day's forklift truck training.
Right.
And then I was always going to move to London, and I wanted to kind of work in the music industry, wanted to work in the entertainment industry, massive comedy fan, massive music fan. and I saw an ad. I moved up to London, and about 3 weeks in, I saw an ad in the back of the Enemy or the Moonbaker going, warehouse workers wanted for rough trade distribution. So I wrote away. This is pre-internet time. I wrote away, came back to the house at some point. It was this house in East Dulwich, it was a 6-bed house with 220 fucking students living in it. And someone had written on a shitty little whiteboard, Andy, call Juliet at Rough Trade. So I called this number, and again, that thing, one of those kind of sliding doors moment. If it had been my mate Ian, who inevitably at that time would have been stoned, he would have forgotten, and that wouldn't have happened. I probably wouldn't have been it. So I call up Juliet, go for an interview at Rough Trade, and she says, we need someone to work in our goods in department. I go, okay, what's that? She says, blah 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 blah. She said, I said, I've got a forklift truck driving license, and she went, you can start tomorrow. And that literally, my career path started there. It's just that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
My Manchester promoting job for a company called MCR Music, I was on, it was my third day at uni, and sorry, I was a bit off the mic then. Terrible mic technique. I told you I was a terrible comic. It was my third day of Freshers Week. I was on the Stella Artois, Manchester University's Freshers pub crawl, and I'd had a lot of Stella Artois, and I bumped into this girl flying on the street, hammered, and just went, I used to do flying. I didn't. And I was like, I've done flying. I'd love to do some flying. And she's like, cool, give me your number. She rang me the next day. She was like, can you go to Sankey's tomorrow night and do some flying? I was like, yeah, there you go, fine. And that was it. And then from that moment, we used to promote loads of music bands and stuff like that. And it was more kind of marketing distribution, not promoting. But it was exactly. So you don't know. So these things of when people think all agents are it's a job that you acquire experience because you go through everything, and I think a huge amount of being an agent is intuition. I think is about having that type of thing, but we're not like doctors. We've not gone to 7 years of agent school to be this is how it works and stuff. It's a very interesting, we've all kind of got into this in different ways. There's a lot of agents. I can probably think off the top of my head, there's 3 agents that started. They went to Edinburgh Uni and they went and flyered at the festival in their first year, and they caught the bug and they became, and they fell into comedy that way. Or I know people who, so it's an interesting route into comedy, into being an agent.
Very different in the States, obviously, with that whole kind of big agency and that much more defined kind of agent assistant structure.
Yeah, the mailroom. If any acts listening to the show want to know what it's like in America on that, there's a book called The Mailroom, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's all these people with tiny little vignettes of their stories of coming up through the mailroom in America and how that works. And it's like the William Morris mailroom program's harder to get in. It's like getting into Harvard Business School. It's you've got to be they are alpha human beings, those people who get on that. It's amazing. They're and I work a lot with a lot of American agents, and we're kind of partners with a few and stuff like that. Yeah, and they've worked to get there.
But then I feel flyering is almost that system. I do feel most agents or most people in the industry that have stuck it out are the people that have grafted and started off as the flyers, and we've all been there, we all know, and we've got a new batch this year, and those are the people that in a couple of years' time will see them being an assistant to someone and sticking
absolutely.
It out.
It's like you're the other side of what we're doing. So when we start out, we're just open mic, we're just trying to get our graph, we're trying to just work our way up and get to a certain level, and I feel often you're seen as people who've just sort of fallen into a job, and therefore you've got more structure and more stability than we have at our end, whereas the reality is, like you said, you start off flying or you start off in a B&Q or and it's sort
that
of,
was always the plan.
That was it. I know you had a 5-year plan. It started with
first
B&Q,
then the world.
But what I find really interesting is the more people I meet in industry, especially in comedy, they started in music and moved over. And for me that's really fascinating, especially with how online people are sort of doing the similar thing to what they did with music about 10 years ago, which was sort of go out, start your own gig, build your own following, and then sort of continue to gig to them?
Well, that's also because a massive chunk of the music industry died on its arse, and there's less jobs in the music industry. So that definitely has a effect.
That happened because they didn't move with the times. That's not a thing. And I feel like comedy is actually embracing it a lot more by allowing comedians to put up their content for the internet, or allowing them to build their own little audience and stuff. I mean, when you started out, how did you gain? So say day one you're back as sort of starting out as an agent. How did you gain the trust of your first comedian to say, look, I will help you with your career? Because if you've not got so a lot of comedians now will ask other people who are represented by that person to say what they like, how do they work, whether will I get on with them, could you get on with them, have you worked with them in the past? If you've not got a back catalogue or a history with comedians, how have you actually built that trust up?
I remember my first job in an agency was with Glorious Management, and I remember Lisa White saying to me, your first year is going to be shit. She was like, no one trusts you because so many people come and go. You've got to graft that first year, and the more you stick around, the more people realise you're here to stay. And I think it is exactly that. And I think for most agents, you don't go into an agency and start from scratch with nobody. You've got a team around you that will work with you and their clients, and then you kind of, in a way, it's almost like a fringe show. It's word of mouth, and then your reputation grows, and the good work that you do kind of spreads, and if you stick it out, it's great.
I think that's very true. I think that, you go in and... So, from my experience, I had worked at Avalon for, a few years. I'd done the Comedy Network, so that's what I was specifically in charge of. So I knew... I was constantly ringing all those comics. I knew Ellis James, I knew John Robbins, I knew Nish, I knew James, because they were doing gigs for me. So they knew that I could work that way. I was also... I coming from an agency that had that, Phil Mcintyre coming into, starting a new agency within an agency, so to speak, I had that security where I could turn around and go, like Lucy Ansbro, who's my boss at Phil Mcintyre, she's the other manager at Phil Mcintyre, is my boss. She's got all those years of experience. She works with Caroline, she works with Victoria. We did Phoenix Nights, we did all, we've toured all these things. Phil's been working in this business for... I wouldn't like to say when his first gig was, but since the 70s, should we say. And collectively within that agency, we've got hundreds of years of experience, if we add it all up together. So there's very few, like you said, there are very few agencies that are a complete island where someone's just gone, I think I might be a comedy agent. And then that's it. And then also, I think another point is, obviously, when we're trying to sign clients, we're pitching ourselves as well. That's another thing as well. I think there's sometimes I don't think comics realise how much there is. It's a duality in that relationship, and the fact that we're pitching ourselves as agents and going, trust me, I'm going to do a great job, and I want you as much as you want an agent, especially if you've got a client who's talking to a lot of agents and you're trying to, in inverted commas that you can't see on the podcast, win a client. That's the thing. So you have lots of chats with them and meetings and coffees, and you try and build up that relationship, and you have to, I think if you click personally with a client as well, I think it's very important. If they, within that meeting, that first ever meeting, and, you do that kind of quite cheesy agent question of where do you want to go, what do you want to do, what do you want to do in your career, and they'll say, I want to do this, this and this, and you go, right, well, I think the way to do that is this, 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 and this, and this. What do you think of that as a plan? And then if they like the sound of that, and it doesn't, absolutely doesn't always work, they might turn around and go, actually, I don't like the sound of that. This other agent's got another plan, I prefer that. I'm going to go to that agent. That's fine. And so you build up that kind of trust and stuff. And then I think you and Lisa were totally right. That first year is always hard because you're not making any money, especially if you signed young acts, you're not making a lot of money. You've taken a lot of losses kind of financially. The work's not quite there yet because they've not broken through, but you're getting to that point. But then also I've found that there's a bit of a tipping point as well, is that once you've had success with an act, once you've had that, it starts, it really does quickly snowball, because like you said, comedians will go, for example, myself, people have seen what I've done with Nish or James, and they've gone, I really like that. That's a really good way of, I'd quite like a bit of James Acaster's career. And so, but it's and forgetting that it's James who's written all the shows and been a phenomenal comedian for all that time. But, you know, so that's definitely a thing, I think, of getting clients. I think your reputation grows. And, you know, the people who've been around, you know, your Lisa Thomases, your Hannah Chambers, those people, you know, they've got 20 odd years of experience, and, you know, that's why they've got phenomenal acts. But, yeah.
And it is, you know, you talk about those meetings, those early meetings, it's kind of like going on a date.
Yeah, speed
You
date.
know, it's that's what it is. It's like, well, what are you about? What am I about? And, you know, I do sit in those meetings and you sort of go, you know, we have to work out, do you like me? You know, because
We're going to have to work together.
we're going to have to work together,
Yeah.
you know, and it is very much, it's a real personal relationships business, you know, and it's just that thing where, as an example, so I'm working with the Death Hilarious, who are a bonkers Welsh sketch duo, sort of league. We describe them as Little Britain, directed by Ken Russell. Dark and twisted. They're doing their first hour, and they're a unique pair. And, you know, I saw them do 6-7 minutes at Sketchfest a couple of years ago, and thought, oh, there's something about them, and you go, whoa, they're interesting. Need to keep an eye on them. Need to, you know, kind of see where they go. And then went to see them in Cardiff, and they did a 40-minute show in Cardiff, which was just absolutely fantastic. And then sort of spent some time with them, and I kind of had a couple of meetings with them, and going, look, this isn't going to be easy. You know, this is not a good-looking 26-year-old man in a cool t-shirt talking about Tinder. It's not going to walk into other places. But you'd be honest with them and go, you know, this is what you're doing. But one of the things that clicks with me and them is that, as an example, speaking to Darren, who's one of them last night, and he'd just gone on a head clearing Edinburgh walk for a couple of hours yesterday afternoon, you know, pressure and whatever, and it's all a bit full on. And he said he was playing a band called Lightning Bolt, who are an American extreme noise, I think they're 2 bass, 1 drum band. And I know who Lightning Bolt are, and I love that kind of music. And there's a bond between me and Darren on that kind of extreme, weird, out there music. And we were talking about Om and Sun and Sleep and a whole bunch of other bands that you'd have no fucking idea who they are. And my joke with them is like, you aren't going to find anyone else in the comedy industry who can engage with you on that level. But on engaging with them on that level, I understand where they're coming from and what they're trying to do, because it's a kind of deeper thing. So there's a click there, and there's a kind of, you get us, you know, and I get you. So that then hopefully becomes the core of a successful professional relationship.
Yeah.
What I've found since hitting 30 is I now treat dating like, you get this bit definitely. I get this bit like, so I treat it more like not at the very early stages, but you treat it more like you are going to a business partnership with someone, because you do have to work together on more fundamental levels than all they're hot or all they're interesting or whatever. You have to be like, oh, do we fundamentally click? Yeah. And the more I talk to comedians, because I'm trying to independently build my own audience, I find sharing small things like that about myself allow people to be turned off or turned on more than they would have done if I just go, well, I'm just funny. Because, so I've got another podcast coming out soon about time travel, and the amounts of people that happen to be fascinated by time travel is insane, and I didn't know that. And if I hadn't have told people that I have an obsession with that, then I wouldn't have these people going, oh, let's talk about that for hours on end. And so I understand what you mean by that, because it's like, I suppose what I'm going to ask is, do you think you work for them or they work for you, or is it kind of a combination, or is it something else? How do you see that partnership?
They work for me. They're my bitches entirely.
Absolutely.
Is this what you like at dating? Is that what it is?
Actually, let me just go back to your previous thing about online, because again, that's how things have changed. In that the ability to find, if you're working in a niche, or there's something niche about you about what you do, the ability to find that niche and work that niche and use that niche to build an audience is now available and is now there. I was just trying to think, for example, that one of the things that came across my head was Kiri and Rachel's All Filler No Killer podcast. You know, it's just something like that. It's a podcast about serial killers, but that can allow you to build an audience, and in doing that, you are hopefully building an audience of people who kind of, you know, get you. You do not, you know, you don't stumble across a podcast about serial killers. Do you know what I mean? You kind of have to. You kind of.
Literally, I love serial killers. You've got no idea. Well, love's the wrong word.
But it just that that there is now the facility and ability for people to build an audience, and all that stuff about those old sort of business school cliches about, can you find 10,000 people to give you 10 quid a year, which is from a comedian's point of view, that you are then a sustainable business. That is now a much potentially easier reality to kind of work in. And to
I saw that. We had that with Ellis James and John Robbins on the Radio X. I mean, they went from, some people who were doing, there or thereabouts Soho Theatre small room to Shepherd's Bush Empire sold out in 10 minutes and then 2 additional Kentish Town forums, and that was like, and I remember when we took that tour to them, they sat down in the meeting and they were like, we've got your London date, bang, Shepherd's Bush Empire. They were like, what? I saw I saw Bowie in it like that and stuff like that, and then it did that, and those fans, and I think also with online as well, you can get a kind of devotion of fans, and I think especially podcasts, because it's an interesting art form where it's in your ears, it's intimate in that sense that no one else is involved, and it's a weekly thing. And people do it on. Or it can be a weekly thing.
Bi-monthly, don't.
Right, okay. Or it could be. So let's take that out. It's a regular thing. Edit point. It's a regular thing. But
I have time to do one more.
But people, they have that. They garner that thing, and I think also like John and Ellis, for example, because that's the most involved I've been in something like that. They get this level of passion, So I saw John here on his first night in Edinburgh, and someone bought him, just on stage, there was a can of neck oil beer, because he's always banging on about how much he loves neck oil beer on the podcast. Someone had just come and put it on the thing, and it's like, that wasn't happening 5 years ago before the podcast happened and stuff like that. So I think, online is a great way.
And also the other thing as well is that it allows that fan or potential fan to find out more about you and delve. If there is, we work with Gabriel Abulu, who's a young up-and-coming comedian. He's got a podcast called the 3-Track Podcast. He's a music obsessive, and it's his version of Desert Island Discs. We call it Desert Island Discs without all the dull stuff about your family. People come on and talk about their 3 favourite records, and it's starting to build, and it's getting a bit of traction, and his kind of Twitter following through that is starting to grow. But we've now got 20-something podcasts up there, and if someone comes in and likes it and gets off on it, they can go, oh look, there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and it allows them to engage with Gabe at a much deeper level than kind of then going, oh, is he playing? Is he going to be, in my town at some point over the next year and a half on a kind of mixed bill? It just allows the fan to spend more time with the talent.
But then this kind of feeds back into what we were saying about promotion. So as much as you say, I don't want to do promotion anymore, I feel like every agent or management, it all feeds into itself because of online, because of all the stuff that I guess building a brand or building your USP as a comic feeds into building that audience and translating into ticket sales and all of that, and that's something that just you can't get away from, no matter what part of the industry you're in.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's show business. From my end, show comes first, business second, and as a result, I mean, it's kind of weird to me when I talk to a comedian who goes, oh yeah, and I just want to do a show, and I'm like, yeah, but that means you got to sell a ticket at some point. So you are a business.
Yeah.
Like you can't just go, I'm going to put on a show. Even here, when it's a free Fringe show, you've still got to get people in the door and then ask them for money. So from my perspective, it's quite frustrating when it's sort of I get that Stuart Lee bangs on about how 20 years ago the Fringe you could come up with half an idea and develop it for the whole thing, and I'm like, but that's not what this is anymore. Like this is an arts festival that's now a showcase. It's not and if you want to come up and fly under the radar, that's doable. Yeah. But it's definitely not what this is for.
And I think this place is also just a showcase, but it's also a weaponised showcase, I think, as well, because I think what's happened since that 20 years ago thing there, all the promoters, various promoters have all come in, and there has been an arms race. I remember the year, you remember that there's an extra little thing every year. It's like suddenly someone was walking around with flags on their backpacks, and all that. Suddenly the flyers were in luminous jumpers, and you know, all that. There's something little changes every single year, and everyone catches up with them. And that's interesting when for example, when I talk to the American agents, like about, and they're like, okay, we're sending over this person. They've been on Conan and Colbert, and they're on Variety's top 10 acts to watch this year, and they come out here, and I'm just like, this is not your playground. At least it is, but if you do it, you need to come with an American and a UK partner, because it's just like you've no idea what you're like the bear pit that this whole place is. So it's an interesting one.
Just going back to your point about it being commercial, when I'm having those meetings and conversations with a potential client, one of the things that I will always look at is, are they commercial in the sense that do they have an awareness of the fact that yes, they are in show business? Because it's such an easy cop out to be, I'm creative, I don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. And it's just like, well, okay, if you want to be on TV, then I would suggest that you have a certain responsibility to be aware of the TV industry. Do you know who those commissioners are at the BBC? Those people can make a profound difference to your career and your life and whatever. And to not, at a very small level, to engage with that, I think is a bit of a kind of just a certain lack of responsibility about yourself and your career. I'm not saying you should be, you don't
have to know the name of every commissioner, but
no,
you should know the ones that you want to be on.
You need to understand that you are living and performing in a commercial context. And it is a frustration where you just kind of go, don't use that, I'm a creative person cop out. That's just slack. It just don't.
But also I guess you end up, especially with something like Edinburgh Fringe, you end up picking up the pieces, because I think not a lot of acts, some acts can forget they are paying money to be here. It costs money to come up. And I've had it with people doing free fringe shows saying, I'm not going to do a bucket speech because that's not me and that's not what I want to do. It's like, okay, but you're then accepting that you are paying people to come in and see your show.
Exactly, having a very expensive holiday is what you're having.
And I would never come up to Edinburgh and think this is where the money is going to be made. It's exactly what we've been saying. It's a showcase, and the idea is that the work comes after and you're getting people in. And
for me, that also it links into a bit of a self-esteem thing about them. Maybe they feel like they're not ready. Maybe they feel like, I'm just going to try out Edinburgh and see how it goes. And I feel like there are enough festivals around the country. I go to about 9 or 10 every year that you can try stuff out in if you're wanting to do that. But when it comes to this particular festival, you can't compare it to other ones, because it's, when I spoke to the Brighton Fringe a little while ago, they were like, we don't want to be Edinburgh. Like we couldn't handle that many people coming into the city. It would. Edinburgh can't handle this many people coming into the city. It breaks them. So why would we want to become another one of those?
I will say one thing on that point though, on the kind of flying under the radar and trying things out. You can do that, I think, actually, but I think it's all about expectation. That's the key.
And goal setting.
And if you go up to Edinburgh and it's your first ever hour, you don't have an agent or a promoter, you've gone from that, I had a pretty good 20 that I'm getting a couple of paid slots for, and I think I can stretch myself to an hour this year, and I'm in a nice little 20-seater free fringe venue, blah blah blah. If you go into that going, I'll be on the Apollo in October, like that.
They got that a little bit further ahead, by the way.
They've still got slots for September. I know it. So
I'll send them a tweet.
But that's the thing. That you're going to have your heart broken, because that's not going to happen. But if you go in there, not you. Sorry, if that act, that hypothetical act will get the heart broken. But I'm looking after someone this year. We took the decision in the autumn that actually I think it would be a good thing for them to do this year. They've never done Edinburgh before. They've done 2 weeks on a split in a free fringe show. They probably could have done it. They could have done it now. They're a very talented comic, and they could have got to that level. But actually, I think this year we thought, do you know what? You've never done a month before. You've got, she's a mum. She's got kids. You're going to be away from London for a month. That's the first time you've done that. Let's put you in a package show and get you a 40-minute on the free fringe, and then you can it'll give you that first year of Edinburgh. And the stresses and the strains and the halfway fringe flu and the rolling out of Brooks at 5 and all that stuff, you can get all that out of the way without the pressure of I'm going to be putting TV producers in there every night. There's going to be reviewers in every night. There's going to all that pressure. But absolutely key to that decision was the actor and me talking about that and going, right, so that means that actually the year after is the year after building towards your first year. So think that, as long as you're aware of the timescale we're working on, and that's, I think, patience is the biggest thing that I kind of try and stress to comedians, especially unsigned comedians. It very rarely happens overnight in this business. You very rarely get someone who's gone, graduate, show, bang, like, and they do, and it does happen. There has been, I can think of a handful of people like that. I think they get found out sometimes, those comedians, because they haven't built, I think, the skill set that you learn, that you personally are learning now at this Fringe. It will pay off later down the line. You will get those, it will all happen. Do you know what I mean? I had someone, again, going back to that, the act who's doing the 40-minute on the Free Fringe, they forgot a bit of their show. And, and I was like, this is the first time that happened to them. And they were like, I can't believe I just forgot, a really strong, that's my best 5 minutes of that show. And then you go, well, yeah, but do you know what? At least you've done that now. Yeah. And you've forgotten, so you won't, that's a thing that, and do you know what? You did that without Steve Bennett, the Guardian commissioner from BBC One. You did, all that stuff. You did it in a nice, you've built your skills. It's like,
we've all done that. It's not a rarity to
exactly.
something in your show.
Every comic's done it. Then, so you need to get all those experiences out of the way. Or getting heckled, or having shit-faced people walking in, and halfway through the show, is this the bar? All of those little experiences will end up paying off, and you will get. You can't come to Edinburgh and do a month. It's impossible. Or if you find that you're not doing this, then you're in the wrong job. I think you can't have that much stage time in the same venue every single day and not improve. You've got to improve. You can't not. So every year is an improvement thing in Edinburgh. So you can come up to Edinburgh and do it under the radar and build here, but accept it's going to cost you a lot of money, and B, it's going to take you a long time. But there's no overnight successes in this. It's like football, weirdly, I think, now. Going back to your Stuart Lee point, 20 years ago, there was only 30 of us and we could do whatever we want. You get a 5-star review in The Scotsman, and then you've got Channel 4 ringing you up going, do you want to take your TV show? It used to happen. Get nominated, you'd get a TV show out of it. It's different. It's a lot more professional now. It's not that thing of, like football, it's not like you can't have that 10 pints before a game. Brian Robson playing at Old Trafford shit-faced. You can't do that anymore. It's you've got to be really good, and you've got to work really hard.
I'm very goal orientated. I'm someone that sets targets quite a lot for myself, just because I have to, because otherwise I'm really lazy. If I don't have a deadline, I just don't do it. And it's really like that. But what I've discovered, especially in the last year, is if I'm doing something new, so if I'm doing something I haven't done before, I'll go, right, I want that done by June, right? But I don't know if that will take me till June. I don't know that that's the amount of time I need to do that. I've never done it before. And I find, especially at the Fringe, you can overstretch yourself very easily by going, I could do 5 gigs in a day, that's absolutely fine. And then you realise, oh, hang on, 4 of them on the same street, but the one in the middle is on the other side of Princes Street. I'm not going to make that. So I totally agree with you on the whole, working really hard and getting yourself into a fit state for doing Edinburgh. I do feel there's moderation that slightly needs to be done, and I feel like you guys do a really good job of making sure your act is aware, especially someone that's never been here. By the way, that's not near that. You've zoomed out enough on Google Maps, it looks near, but it's not the thing. When you're scouting for acts, for example, so say you were looking for an act, how do you do that, and how has the internet changed that, if at all?
I just want to go back just on that point. Just Gad Elmaleh, it's a great example of that. Gad, the French comedian.
Oh yeah.
So Gad is massive in France, huge. I mean, just sells out arenas. Yeah. And when I was at my previous company at UTA, we represented him through the kind of music side, and he started performing in English. Did some runs at the Soho Theatre.
Did a lot with Eddie Izzard, didn't he?
Does a lot with Eddie. He sold out the Royal Albert Hall in London to an exclusively French crowd, but he wants to start performing in English, and he was banging on to me about Edinburgh. I want to do an Edinburgh run, and I had to sit with him and go, that's great, but you haven't come up through the circuit. You haven't come and done that 20 minutes on a mixed bill and then done your 40 minutes on whatever. I am not. There is no way I'm going to let you come up and do an Edinburgh run completely ignorant of what it is. You've never even been to the city before. I'm not going to drop you in to the madness that is Edinburgh. So what we did, it was like, okay, look, what's going to happen? You're going to come to Edinburgh for 2 or 3 days. We'll find a slot in a 150 cap room. I think it was a Jack Dome we put him in, and you can do one show.
Why not?
So he came, booked it. Obviously, there's more than 150 French people in Edinburgh at that time. It was sold out within kind of 2 seconds. And just before the show, I was standing with him, and he said, 4 days ago, I played to 12,000 people in Marseille, and tonight I'm playing to 150 people in Edinburgh, and I'm more nervous tonight. But he did the show and then spent 2 days, and he came back and he went, thank you. He said, if I'd come and done a full month, I probably would have had a proper nervous breakdown 2 weeks in. And it's just that thing of just don't jump in.
I remember an American comic 2 years ago, I won't name them, but literally 6 days in just went, fuck this, and just rung up and just got on a plane. And it was just that, literally just like stood up in his came home from his show. I think again it was one of these people I've done Conan, I've done all these things, done all the, like in America it's like proper rising star. Just came home, there's 2 people in again, and he just went, packed his suitcase, rung his, I can't remember who he was, I don't even know if he had a promoter or whatever, just went, I'm at Edinburgh Airport, I'm not coming back. And they've never come back.
I think the Fringe is actually doing, before we move back into scouting, I think the Fringe is actually doing a really good job this year of addressing mental health issues for comedians, because I feel like for a long time they were kind of really supportive of like getting the progression stuff going, but now they've got quite a lot of events like at Fringe Central that are free, included in your sort of price, to help you learn how to deal with the stress or how to deal with the problems that this Fringe can have. I mean, personally, what do you guys do for your acts that help them with mental health problems that they might have, or stress issues that they come into contact with just naturally being at the Fringe?
It's down to having that team around you, but also everyone's first Edinburgh is going to be stressful. I mean, everyone's 10th, it's going to be stressful.
I was going to say, does it get...
Yeah, no, never gets better.
Because the stresses are different.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you think, I'm not selling out my... not selling out my 50-seater free Fringe show, but you're doing the EICC, like 1,200 seats, you're still like, we've only sold 800 tonight, that means it's 3/4. You know what I mean? There's still that, it will never go away, that stress for comedians. I don't know. I think
we're all happy to hear that.
No, but like, I remember like, with Bill Burr last year, I remember talking to his promoters and stuff, and like, he loved it by all accounts and stuff like that, but there's still that kind of, it's fucking Bill Burr, do you know what I mean? Like, what have you would think, what the hell have you got to be worried about? But obviously you do. But going back to your thing about looking after your comic, like, mental health and stuff like that, a huge part of being an agent and manager, and this is where the kind of differentiation in America is, like the agent manager type thing. Well, over here we're both. We're kind of, I think there is a huge kind of pastoral care part of the job, making sure, like, if, for example, that comics having a really bad time, and it might not be to do with the show, it might be they might be having family problems, they might be having relationship problems, they're not getting on with someone in their flat, or, you know what I mean, all the stress and the pressure cooker of Edinburgh. Something as simple as going, do you want to come for a cup of tea? And do you know what? Whinge at me for an hour. Not in a nice way, do you know what I mean? And like, or do you know what? What are you doing tomorrow? Do you want to go to the cinema? Let's go and watch a film tomorrow, or let's go and walk up Arthur's seat. Thank God nobody's taken me up on that offer. But you know what I mean? That thing of, that's a huge thing, and also spotting it before it's going to happen. I think, like, if you've got an act who's at, they're out every night, like, there's then that's fine. Enjoy yourself. But if you're out getting mashed till 6 a.m. every day, and you've got a midday show, and you're losing your voice, and you're not eating properly, and just not looking after yourself, like, you have to kind of step in and go, come on, you've got a job to do here, like he says with a big flaw in his throat.
I think that's why, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that's why it's so important when you have that initial meeting, when you're meeting agents, is to click with them and to get on with them, And I think some young acts that just think, I want an agent because that will progress my career, and you just go for anyone and I don't care, and they'll send out the same email to every single agent. I really like the acts that you represent. And we know, and all the agents kind of see the people that are going around all the different agencies. But it's so important to be able to click with your agent and to have that relationship, because it is a lot more personal than a normal office job and talking to Sue by the coffee machine. It's
I know things about some of my act. Like, they've talked to me about stuff.
Are we going to say something then?
I can tell you stuff.
But no, I know stuff that I'm pretty certain they've not even spoke to their, they want to speak to their parents about this stuff. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Talk to mum about a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Or you know what I mean? Or like, you're in that level of
inner circle.
Yeah, and also, and you have to know stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we have to know what's going on with our acts behind the scenes, because actually, you need to know if, like, is everything else all right at home, or if, sometimes if things aren't all right at home, and suddenly the acts, they're under a lot of stress. You appreciate that, and you're like, right, this act has come and gone, massively overreacted to a tiny problem, and you sometimes go, okay, well, actually, what else is going on? What else is happening behind the scenes? And then you go, right, okay, well, maybe this is a thing, or and you go specifically about mental health. Like, I've said, look, I think you need to go and talk to someone about this. I think this is an anxiety issue, or I think this isn't. I don't think you're very well. I think this is a health issue, and I think you need to go and see a mental health person. Similarly, I've also gone, I will come to a medical clinic with you because something's happened and you didn't know what to say. You needed someone to call, and I'm there sat in a wait. That's happened. That's happened here. I've been sat in a waiting room with not in this room. Doubles up as but sat in a clinic going like, all right, never mind. This is fine. We can deal with this. We're human beings. Like, you know what I mean? So that's,
and Edinburgh just exacerbates all that stuff. It's a pressure cooker. It's a madhouse. It's it's such a profoundly dysfunctional environment. I speak to friends who go, oh, it must be great. You go and spend a month watching comedy, isn't it brilliant?
You go drink and enjoy yourself.
I know. My friends have said that. I literally had a friend before the Fringe who just went, oh, you're going to have a great time. I wish I could go to the Fringe. It sounds like such a laugh. I was like, it's not a bloody laugh. It was a laugh the first year I came up when I didn't have a show and I wasn't doing much. But now it's like, fucking hell.
But we're all chasing that first Edinburgh as well.
Oh my
God. We're all chasing that first when we came up here.
I missed
as a punter going, oh my God, isn't this amazing?
But that's go back to the relationship analogy. I think we're all chasing that first time where you're so naive and you're so eager-eyed and you're so excited because you're like, oh, someone likes me. Oh, this is a great, exciting thing. It's the first time, blah, 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 blah. And then you get jaded and upset and like, oh God, it's all the same. Oh, it's always going to be a stupid routine of whatever. And like, that's being a bit more cynical.
I would say, hopefully, your relationship has grown and matured and become
Simon, would you like to go and speak to a professional as well? No, but my point is that your relationship with Edinburgh is like that, because I feel like everyone has a great first Fringe and then they go, oh, I'll come back next year, and then you realise it's not as good the second year, but it is good in other ways, and then it gets better in other ways, and you keep eventually. I feel like there's a tipping point where you go, oh, hang on, it's really great because it's great for my career, but it's not great for my everything else. Like it's
you go, wow, look, I can stay up drinking till 5 a.m. with all these cool people. That's fantastic. And then 2 weeks in, you're going, I've broken my soul.
You don't know how much of a lightweight drinker I can't even have one.
But if you step back objectively from it and you look, and again I say this, with acts as well. You look at Edinburgh as a process. It's kind of we're going to get a bunch of performers who have the confidence to be performers, but within a large number of them, one of the reasons why they're performers is probably because there's call it a flaw or something within them. There's an insecurity, there's a thing that pushes them and drives them to go on stage. We're going to get them. We're going to get them to perform almost every day for a month in front of their peers, their industry, people who potentially can make a profound difference to their career and therefore their life, and an audience. And we're going to do that in a city that has one of the daftest drinking cultures in Europe, And also, when you go through that process, you are potentially going to lose thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. It's because of the nature of it. And you say that to somebody who doesn't know, and they just go, "You are genuinely all mental." I had an act whose dad was an accountant, and they looked at
Sorry, I love it. My dad looked at my budget for this Fringe because I've got one. Apparently, that's a good idea. It's not. It makes you sad. And I have a little one column for chocolate because obviously I need that. You have your alcohol, I have chocolate. But I showed it to my dad, and my dad was like, "You're not going to." I know I'm not going to make any money. But I know that going into it. Yes. I know it's an investment. I know that I'm paying to be better, and I'd rather pay to be better than sitting in London not getting better. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you can't afford it, I get it. It is not elitist in that way, but it does rule out a lot of people who can't afford to do it. And I'm very privileged to be here. Even in the mornings when I get up and I go, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" Like I know that I have got a fucking ridiculous opportunity here that I might not have next year because I might not afford enough money to do it or whatever. And I don't take it for granted in any way, shape or form, but it is one of those things where I have to presume that every penny I put in is not going to come back, because as an independent performer specifically, I don't have an agent or someone who could foot the bill or could take some of the bill off me. And so it's kind of amusing to me that that Act's parent would even bother looking at it, because A, they're not in the industry, so they don't have a bloody clue, and B, the fact that they would even think profits on the cards is a lovely pipe dream for a lot of people, but also don't start with that as a goal. Like, I don't think that's ever should be a goal in an Edinburgh show. But and
And I think going back to that point of I don't have an agent and stuff like that. Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. I think it's like with the the explosion of the free Fringe and heroes and we'll pay what you want, all that stuff. I think it's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper for comics to come up here than it used to be, where you don't have to do that. In the Pleasance Courtyard, you need 4-sheet posters everywhere, which cost hundreds. All of that stuff. And I think what you can do as an act now, certainly, is get good enough. Again, going back to my point I made earlier about that, using it as a training ground to get better and better and better, until that point where you're so good that
they can't ignore you.
You can't ignore you. And as an agency, we pay for our acts Edinburgh's lock, stock and barrel. We cover everything. Like if you're going to lose £12,000, we'll swallow it. But that's fine. But to get to that level as well, and as an agent, I need to go, right, well, if I'm going to be spending 12, could potentially be £30,000-40,000 in Edinburgh before, if they have 4 or 5 Edinburghs where it's not quite popped. And also remembering that I've got to make that from 15% of their earnings. It's not, that's a lot of money. But if they're that good and I believe in them, I'll do it and I'll take that risk. And, again, going back to James, for first client, James didn't make any money in his first Edinburgh, didn't make any money in his second Edinburgh, didn't make any money, and it was a slow progression of him kind of making it. But you get to there is a tipping point in Edinburgh. You look at those acts in the Assembly on the Mound or EICC or those ones, they're making a decent amount of money out of Edinburgh, but there's no one in those venues who hasn't either come in from, for example, Bill Burr coming in and 20 years of road experience in American Netflix specials, etc., or someone like Milton Jones, who 93 did Milton get nominated for the Perrier? Like, fucking hell, that's pretty impressive.
That's a lot of work.
I think a big misconception about agents is that you're just going to come in and solve everything, because I know you're not, by the way, but that's why I said a misconception. But I think a lot of comedians, especially when they start out, see a very established comedian, see the pattern in that those established comedians have agents, and put correlation and causation together and go, oh, an agent solves it, that I don't understand the industry, they'll deal with it. How do you manage that level of expectation if, for example, you really like an act, you think they're great, you think they're going to be amazing, but their perception is you're going to do all the work?
I probably wouldn't get involved with that act, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Because why? Because why? There's definitely you will find that you're working with, you take on a client, and then suddenly they go, oh, I've got an agent now.
Yeah.
I don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's just not how it works.
No.
It is very much a relationship and a kind of 50-50 relationship. We can't, we can potentially open doors, we can, do all the stuff that we do, but it has to come, the drive has to come from the act. From the talent. That's all we are doing in essence is facilitating that, and we can advise and we can shape and we can help, but it has to come from them. Anyone who thinks that, oh, I've got an agent now, I am going to be on the Apollo within 18 months. He's just living
It's
in
just
a, living in a dream. And you again goes back to that, that initial initial chat where someone goes, "Oh, I want to be on Mock the Week," and you go, "Okay, right, let me talk you through this."
Is that what you want?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if that's the sum total of your ambitions, then I'm not interested. But also, you're at Edinburgh. There's 1,000 comedy shows on, and there are that number of slots on Mock the Week. Can you see how tight that filter gets at the top?
And in order to get on that, just very specifically, because I talk a lot to comics about Mock the Week and stuff like that. To get on that, those small slots, you then need to unseat someone who's there.
Yeah.
So you need to unseat, James Acaster or Josh Widdicombe or Rob Beckett or, Tiff Stevenson or Sarah Pascoe or, all those people. You have to be better than them to get on that, because it's not fair otherwise, is it? Because if you were one of those acts and they've got there through merit and hard work, so you shouldn't have to do, you know what I mean? It's really you can't be like, oh, they get everything. It's like, yeah, well, they've got everything because they're brilliant and they've worked really hard.
But from my perspective on it, as a performer who's never done a panel show, or at least never a TV panel show, that is a totally different skill set. I mean, obviously on Mock the Week they've got that stand-up sort of section and stuff, and they've got again, but that's in an artificial studio setting where they've been given the stuff beforehand and all that kind of stuff. So from my perspective, it's like, how do you get to be good at that? So it's sort of the internship problem. How do you get the job without having the experience if you can't get the experience?
I think well, to answer that specific question on panel shows, the way I would suggest you get experience of panel shows is once, and then this is actually probably where an agent does help, because there's all these panel shows, and there's a lot of panel shows that have never seen the light of day, where they've done office run-throughs at the production companies, or they've booked out the Pleasance and Islington and they've done a live version or something like that. They all happen, and when they're booking those, when the production companies are booking those things, they come to agents, and actually I can go, right, I've got this act. They're probably not ready for when this goes. When you figured this out and it actually gets commissioned, it's on telly, they're probably not ready for that. But I know you're doing office run-throughs. I know it's only 50 quid or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But go and do it. And then again, you say to that comic, use that as it's training, like it's pre-season training. Like I use that phrase all the time. Like use this as preparation for the moment when you get on that. And then also, once those acts go on those panel shows, every single one's different, and you don't it's really funny. You see that, you can see people the first time they go on Mock the Week. You can see it even when you're in the green room watching the record happen live. You can go, they're not going to do that again next. That was a mistake this time. And you see a lot of comics go sometimes on first time they do the panel shows. They go really out the gate and it's like, no, just sit back. And that first 10 minutes of them won't be in the edit, it, but thankfully they've got it out of the way. So they've got it all out of them, and they can relax and that kind of thing. But so the comics still learn, the comics are learning, it's that thing. It is that thing, yeah. I think once you will always continue to climb as a comedian. And even like Seinfeld said that, do you know what I mean? He's like, if you stop learning, then something's gone wrong. So in order building, that's where an agent can help, I think. You know what I mean? Because those opportunities are rarely offered. They're not going to stick that on, on I don't even know if they're still going anymore. No, but some an open for the comedy forum on Facebook or something like that. They're not going to put that on there. Yeah, you know what I mean? But that's the thing. But
just have a get on my forum. Don't worry about
it. But then also you need that you need that practice. But also it is a risk, because if you go to that trial in front of those production company execs and stuff like that, it's the first time they've seen you, because a lot of the production companies, they work in TV, they don't work in comedy. They work in comedy TV, but they're not out at the circuit every night. They're certainly not going to open mic nights and those things of unpaid nights. They might maybe go to something like Old Rope on a Monday to see a specific person who's doing something for them for another project, but they so they need to be good enough before you put them in there. So if you put someone in there who's absolutely just going to, they're not, they're still at that, they've not done a first hour in Edinburgh yet, they've not, they haven't got those, they haven't earned their stripes. You put them in front of a load of TV execs and they just flail and don't know what they're doing. That will stick in that exact, like, and I'm guilty of this sometimes. I remember seeing acts 5 or 6 years ago and going, oh, that wasn't very good, and then kind of thinking, oh, they're not very good, that act. And you need to go, no, you need to knock that thought out of your head and go, no, I need to see what they're up to now, because 5 years is an enormous amount of time for a comedian to progress. And I have seen that. I've gone, whoa, you're loads better than the last time I saw you. That's brilliant. Like, well done. Like,
but that's an interesting disconnect that I think, because TV people don't really spend much time on the circuit, and they can't. I get it. They've got like a day job. To go out in the evening as well is a pain, as you all know. You do that as well. But there's a too much, I feel, of a disconnect between live work and now TV, because so many things that you would do on TV are not something you would get good training for on the live circuit. And so, you know, as you said, I like the idea of doing that sort of behind the scenes training in office, was it called office run through?
Yeah, office run through.
Office run through. I mean, if you obviously it's a judgment call, and as you said at the start, a lot of being an agent is that sort of gut instinct and stuff. But is there ever a time where you have to say to someone, look, you've done a load of these office run-throughs, you've not gone well, I just don't think TV panel shows are for you. How do you handle that delicate situation?
Delivering bad news and that kind of stuff is the worst part of the job.
Yeah.
And having to say, sorry, that, you know, you went on that run-through and they passed for whatever reason. You know, you did your best. And it comes down to your relationship with that talent, because if you've built that relationship with that talent and you have started working with them because you can see a future for them and a career for them and a career arc and some kind of path, then you wouldn't necessarily get into that situation because you haven't put them forward for that route, because you know them and what they do well enough that you know their strengths, you know what they're good at. So, you know, there are acts of mine where you go, there's just almost no point in putting you forward for that kind of thing, because that's not, you're not what TV are looking for, that's not where your strength is, that's not the environment in which you perform at your best. So let's not. And then it comes from that, you know, that those early conversations going, what do you want? Where do you see yourself? Where do you know? And I'm always wary of that kind of, I want to be on Mock the Week, I want to be on a panel shows thing, because it's so competitive, and it's also, it's such a, if you don't get that and you don't go down that route, where are you going to go then? What are you doing? What are the other parts of your career? What are the interesting things that you're doing? It's like nowadays it's almost like just being a stand-up almost isn't enough in that sense. There needs to be, you know, other things that you've got going on. I work with Shane Todd, and Shane's a Northern Ireland-based stand-up, fantastic stand-up, but he also does kind of characters and does TV presenting and write, just a whole bunch of stuff that, you know, he does. He will text me, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, he will text me and go, oh, filmed a video with Michael on Wednesday, put it up on Facebook last night, and you go and let it go, oh, that's got 250,000 views on Facebook overnight. Well done, mate, that's fantastic. Great, amazing. Could have given me a couple of days warning just so we could respect people for it, and but that enthusiasm, that energy is great. But it's also kind of, that gives me, when I'm speaking to the broader industry about Shane, there's other things that I can talk about. There's this. Okay, so maybe you're not ready for the panel shows yet, but he's doing this whole kind of character stuff that can feed into all sorts of other places and can help your career and can generate income and, you know, and work develop what you're doing.
The first agent I ever had that came to see me, afterwards we had a chat at the end of the gig, and they said, oh, so what do you do? And I went, well, I'm just funny. And they were like, and it was a really weird eye-opening moment where I was like, it's not good enough that you thought I was funny and you came, yeah, sorry about that. I haven't got anything else to offer you right now. and I know that's why they probably didn't want me, or they didn't want to move forward, or whatever. I mean, we stayed in touch, but you still feel like, I can't just say I do that. I have to now say I also write for this person, or I do this for this person, or I edit for this person, or whatever it is, because you're ultimately looking ahead, and we're always kind of, I feel like, looking sort of a little bit ahead, but not as far as you guys might be, because you'll be looking at someone going, I can sign them. That's a 5-year plan for them to get to the goal they really want. Would that be fair to?
Yeah.
Yeah, but also it's a sign of an act, you know, that's going to be proactive. And it's what we were saying before, you can't just get an agent and then assume, right, I'm going to start getting the work flooding in. We have to be able to work with something. We have to be able to say, oh, look at Shane's video. This is something he's doing. This is really interesting.
Go back to scouting for talent. How do you scout for talent, and how has the internet, if at all, impacted that?
I don't think. I don't think there's no prescribed way of finding talent. I think I've certainly have changed my way how I found talent. I mean, I was lucky when I started that I knew people, like, because it goes back to I was running the Comedy Network. I knew who had agents, and so was not on my radar. I knew who didn't have an agent. I knew some people who were unhappy with their agent and about to leave. So I managed to get that little thing, find get some clients. Then what also I find roles a lot, and actually as important as a hi, I really like your axe emails, please watch my 5-minute video below. I'm doing So You Think You're Funny next week. That 10 times, 100 times more important than that is if one of my acts turns around and goes, I saw XYZ last night, it was fucking incredible, you need to go and see them. That will make me go, right, I'm going to go and see them straight away. You also hear, you just hear about acts, do you know what I mean? Who, just by being around it and hearing, who's there's this newcomer over in, at the Free Fringe at the Grassmarket room, and he's like, I've heard he's amazing, nobody's heard of him before. You'll find those acts, because you have to have your ear to the ground as an agent and stuff like that. Competitions is a really good one. We all go to the competitions and we look at, we sit at the back and go, oh, he's quite good, he might have something. I wonder what happens after this competition set. That's always a funny one. You have these people who continually win competitions, and then you find out they haven't got more than 7 minutes worth of material because they've got an amazing, and that can be, there's someone who wouldn't say you think you're funny, and then they talking to Mark Olver last night about it, and there was someone who won it his year, and then they quit comedy after 18 months because they didn't have any more gear, they didn't kick on. And that will happen. That's really important for acts who do that, the competition route, is that you've got to be prepared for the plateau, because it's gonna happen, because you've worked really hard to get this 7, then you've got to get to an out, and it's gonna that bit in there is going to be awful, and you need to be really prepped for it, because it's going to be. And
that's not a specific amount of time either. That could be 1 year, that could be 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely, it could be anything, And
I think the pressure to do a new hour every year doesn't help a lot of comedians who just their process takes a bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, again, as no agent is the same, no comic is the same. Everyone works completely differently. So, there are those acts that, do you know what, maybe coming up with a big management company and a promoter behind them and blah, 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 all the bells and whistles, and that might make the act feel really pressured, and they might go, actually, do you know what, I prefer doing the Free Fringe, and I like sorting out my own flyers and my posters, and what I'd like you to do is just do the stuff in the background, and let me do all of that, because I don't want the pressure of of feeling like I'm working for other people, so to speak. That's a very that thing. So I think ultimately the way we scout talent is brilliant comics rise to our they come into our field of vision. We find out about them by sheer, if you're brilliant, all the agents are going to find out eventually, and then the next step after that is, once you've got an agent, then their job is to take you up to the people above them, telly people, commissioners, venue bookers, tour promoters, etc., and go, they help you the next step. That's what they do. So scouting, please to all comedians, stop sending us emails going, how can I have this and this and this, because you just get it before the Fringe, every day you're getting 10, 20 of them emails just being like, oh. Or, if you want to get an agent to come see you, talk to someone on their books, talk to someone, get a recommendation that way. And you know what, but then again, I've been handed a flyer on the Mile, and I've gone, that looks quite good, I'll take a punt on that. Very rarely has that happened, I will stress, but, you do find that, and so the kind of, cream rises to the top. That's the best way.
Yeah.
The best way to get signed is be brilliant.
Be brilliant. Yeah, just do that. Yeah.
Really simple. Yeah, it's really simple.
Yeah. But going back to that online thing, the thing that online does is that it just if you're looking at talent, and you might hear of someone, and someone says, "Oh, there's someone from," speaking to someone from Manchester, and there's someone on a middle of a bill the other day, and it was really good, really strong. Now, pre-internet, pre-online, it was just like, oh, okay, well, how do you find out about that person? How do you see what, like? Whereas now you can at least search them out. There may well be some video there. There may well be some way of contact. And then the other thing is that what it also potentially allows you to do is you can find out about that person, and you go, well, hang on a second, they've got 2,500 Twitter followers. Well, that's interesting. They're obviously doing something that has drawn those people towards them. You know, and it allows you to at least kind of quantify it, that there's an audience, however small, for what they do.
Yeah, and the internet and that thing, exactly that. You can actually do a bit of kind of digging, so to speak, on the comedian before you find them. And like, there's times when I've gone, you know, I've maybe been a bit slow to hearing about someone or whatever, and you've gone, I saw that person, they were amazing, or I heard about that person, and you Google them straight away, and it's like, oh, they've already got an agent. Oh, right, okay, fine, I'm not, you know what I mean, like that. And you know that usually, actually, that's the first thing I do. If I get really excited by someone and I go, oh, I want to sign that person, the first thing I do is like, are they already represented by someone? Because if they are, I'm not going to go after them, because that's not a cool thing to do. Like that's
interesting. If you knew an act was represented by someone, but you'll never fully know because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But if you felt like, based on who you already represent or based on who you've worked with before, you could do something to help them out, would you not have a sort of an impetus to at least reach out and say, let's have a coffee?
No,
okay.
Absolutely not. It's not cool. It's absolutely not the way. There's like and excuse the phrase, but there's a bit of there's an honour amongst thieves with agents. Like we all have to, because you know, if I start poaching your act or whatever, you know, vice versa, we all start, you know, needling in each other's, getting into other people's ears. I mean, there are agents who do it, and they are well known, and you know, and you're a bit like you're a bit wary of them. But then it's not. I think having a strong business ethic is also what a comic looks for in an agent. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think so.
You can't buy integrity.
No, exactly. And the minute you do start messing with that, it doesn't do you any good as an agent. And I think it doesn't do us as an industry. It doesn't do us well. It doesn't serve any of our purposes. We're actually it's too small, this industry, in terms of the amount of people who work in it. We're all going in the same direction. We all want the best for it. And there are acts. I mean, I won't name them, but there are 5 acts immediately that I can think of when you were saying that. I was like, God, I'd love to manage that act. I love that act. I think they're brilliant. Or I think that agent's not doing a great job with that act. They should be. If I was doing it, I'd be doing this, and this. But it's not my place. Like, you know, it's not my place to say, because also I would hate to think other people are doing that to my acts. I would hate. I mean, it is probably happening. In fact, I've been in Edinburgh and I've had an act come up to me and go, this agent's given me his card, and I know that agent, and they know that client is my act. And so I was like, right, just give me that card. And I kept it in my wallet, and I saw them a couple of days later, and I just went, oh, you gave that to my act the other day. You don't need to do that. And it was that thing where they looked very sheepish and went very kind of like, oh, like, you know, and then you just kind of, it was a knowing look, and you were like, please don't do that again.
But you also said that if someone wasn't happy with their agent, you might do it.
Oh no, how they weren't happy.
How do you know though that they're not happy? Because how uncomfortable is it more uncomfortable for the comedian at that point to approach you, or what would be your way?
That happens. Comedians with agents have approached me and gone, I'm not very happy, I'd like to leave. If that act I would like to take on, what I say is, right, well, go and speak to your agent and tell them why you're unhappy, because that's common courtesy at a basic level. Is you should, and that person is, because also that agent might not know that you've got those problems. You know, you might not have spoken to them about that, and so first thing, go and speak to your agent and try and fix it. And if you are unhappy, right, leave your agent, and then I'll sign you. Like, do you know what I mean? Leave.
Also, don't stay, because, you know, to my mind as a performer, if I'm with a job, often they say stay in the job because you look better to another job if you've got a job. And in my mind, that works the same with agents. If you've got an agent, talk to another agent while you've got the agent, so they don't think, oh, what happened there? What went wrong there? It's like you're deciding.
No, just be very, very, very above board about it. Again, as Chris said, I've sort of had that situation before, and you've had to say, go back, go and have that conversation with your agent. Go and try and sort out those problems. If you're unhappy, well, that's unfortunate. Go and try and sort that out. Talk to them. It's all about the personal relationship. If you then believe that still isn't going to work, then leave your agent, and then once you've left your agent, we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Just don't want to be in that situation don't want to be in that situation where you're having a conversation with someone, they're still represented by someone else. It's too small an industry. We all know each other. It's just
and
not
also
the done thing.
I like that about comedy agency at the moment, I think, as well. And I think this is, and it's been remarked on, this is a thing. I think this the kind of newer generation of agents are. We are all friends. We all speak to each other. We all do, so you don't want to piss your friends off. You don't want to be a dick to your mates. Yeah. And and I would think, if one of my friends who's an agent was starting doing that to me, I'd be like, fuck are you doing? Why would you do that to me? Don't try and nick my acts. And also, it's a waste of our time. Yeah. Every time we're trying to, because I was in LA, and I was in the offices of one of the biggest agents in the world, probably are the biggest agency in the world. This office is like the Death Star. It's absolutely enormous. Thousands of people working there. Rothko's in the lobby. All that trappings of LA. And I was sat in this office.
I know the very place.
Yes. And we were sat there, and I was sat having a chat, just a meeting, because I co-managed a couple of agents, clients with them, and blah blah blah. And we were in that room, and the agent in America said, "Oh my God, it's so sweet in England. In Britain they don't steal each other's clients." And they thought it was like a kind of real parochial kind of sweet thing. And I was like, of course we don't. And I don't know, one of the Brads, they're all called Brad. Brad went, "Oh my God, I'm not even joking, 50% of my time is protecting my clients from being poached or poaching other clients." And I turned around and went, well, you're wasting half your time then. You're not doing 100% of your job for your clients. Your job's is to service your clients, not...
And it's also not as though there's a shortage of talent.
That's
either.
the thing.
None of us are going, oh God, I haven't got enough acts. We could all, if we had the time or the infrastructure, we could all probably take on another 5 or 10 acts because there's no shortage of talent. You don't need to go and poach other people.
Yeah, it's very much a buyer's market at the moment, I think, for agents. I think there's not. Also, there's a few agents. I think the last 5 years, there's less agents. I think that's really helped. That's has really put a lot of pressure on. God, I'm telling, occasionally, when you go to those uni things and stuff like that, I'm just like, be a fucking agent. There's loads of jobs going, because it's there's not a lot of us, and there's more comics than agents, so we can be really picky. And then that goes back to, slightly circles around to what happens when you see someone else, another agent's acts that you love. Then you're just like, well, that's all right. There'll be another brilliant act coming, around the corner that I can work with, hopefully.
I guess the thing there is that you've got a massive pool of talent. You've got a certain number of agents, but then it's the outlets, it's the places to put that talent and place that talent, which is kind of that's in a weird place at the moment in terms of kind of TV and online and all that as to where that works. I just something just struck me when you were talking about pastoral care for the talent. I think that needs to be extended explicitly to all of the industry that's around the talent as well, particularly Edinburgh. Just for the kind of flyers and Everett's you worry about the clients having a tough time, a hard time, but 18, 19 years old and just
stood in the rain with a droopy flyer and a luminous yellow coat on.
Just inside something.
The people that work behind the scenes don't get enough credit at all, but that's the same all year round, I think, in venues and in places. I think a good place to end would be just to say, you can answer either one of these questions, whatever you want to answer. So maybe if there's a common mistake people make when they are thinking about trying to progress to have an agent, what do you think that would be, and how would you change that if you could stop them from doing it completely? Or if you had one bit of advice for a comedian who wanted an agent but is just not sure where to even start trying to ascertain, because it's hard to get a coffee with you. You're very busy, so if we don't know what you're about and what you're doing, how do we even start to work out who is a good person to approach?
You've got to graft. Go on the circuit, graft, find your comedy chums, build up that way. There's too many acts looking for agents too early.
Yeah.
Way too early.
100%.
And then sending you an email every week saying, will you meet with me, over and over again. And that's going to put us off. That's going to put us off.
Because you don't need them. And this actually hopefully might answer both of those questions. My one bit of advice, and before I came to this podcast, I had this in my head already. Don't let us come to you. That is my advice. We will find you, like if we are, and we will kill you, and we will take your skin and make puppets. Yeah, I know. Sorry, but no, we will find brilliant acts. Like rise, and also this kind of cyclical. Don't just sign for the first agent who shows an interest, because what you can do is you can get to that level, and if you're that good, you should be having meetings with 5 or 6, 7 different agents because. You need to do your due diligence. You need to find that person you might be that first person. You might go and actually that first person is the best person, but at least I'm going to meet that person, find out what they do, and then actually, they might be that person. But to be honest, if you don't know how to get an agent, you're not ready to have an agent. Yeah. That's the simple thing. And actually, do you know what? For a lot of clients, they sometimes agents and comics. They sign people way too early sometimes, I think. And it ends up being, and they sign them because you go, I reckon they're going to be brilliant in 5 years' time. What happens is that gets kind of stuck in that agency a little bit, and they maybe might not progress as best they can. Whilst they're progressing, they're paying that agent 15% of their live work, especially because mainly it's live work, at that stage, your club gigs and all that type of stuff. Why you as a comic are you giving someone 15% for something that you can do yourself? Why do that? You don't need. I think most comedians should be able to fill their live diary. I think they should be able to get circuit gigs, and it's actually why, as an agency, we don't do circuit gigs. We don't look after it. It's not our job. And also, I can't be arsed taking 15% of 80 quid for some middle spot. X, you know what I mean? Because I have to then, it's not worth my time. It's not worth £12. Like, like that's how much commission I would make to go
for the 24 emails that you get.
Exactly, yeah. Checking that they're on the website, ringing up, making sure they know the right place. What happens when that act is ill and I have to pull them? And then it's an afternoon ringing round. Like bollocks to that. You can do it yourself. And also, but then the flip side is, do you know how to get the head of comedy into your from the BBC into your show? Well, no, I can, because I know him quite well. So, and he trusts my opinion and will come and see my acts. So yeah, like that's when you need an agent. But if you're, I remember an act coming to me going, again, it wasn't an act I managed, but they went, someone came and saw my show, and they're a book agent, and they want to talk to me, and they want to have a meeting, and I'm really freaked out about it. And I was like, do you want to write a book? And they were like, no, Christ, I couldn't write a book. And I was like, well, why are you having a meeting with a book agent then? Like, do you know what I mean? What are you doing? Like, you don't need a literary agent if you haven't got great plans for this novel or whatever. In 5 years' time, you might, or 10 years' time, 20 years' time, you might want to write a book. So by that point, you've got enough, you will have done enough stuff that, then you have an agent who can then go and talk to publishing houses and do a deal for you. But don't just wait and get better, and more options will open up to you.
It goes back to patience.
Yeah, God, it's patience. And that's the thing. I mean, I've had meetings with acts who are straight out of uni, short student, all that type of stuff. And they've gone, what do you want to do? And you're like, I want to be doing this, and this within the next 2 years. And you just go, you're deluded. Like, you're not, no, because you're not good enough yet. Like, it's that thing. And again, it goes back to that point of, well, do you think you're going to be better than the people that you're going to usurp on those shows? Like, and you have to be. Like, every comic should be aiming to be better than the people that are on TV. Because that's the only way you're going to get on TV. And you don't have to get on TV. Like, that's another thing. I mean, I will stress that. You could write, and, look at Phoebe Waller-Bridge, that's another, that's another route to, Jesus Christ, she's in Star Wars. It doesn't, you know what I mean? So it's not a route. I mean, she got there through Fleabag, but she got that because she'd written, lots of different scripts, and she'd had a few scripts optioned before then, and, or someone like that, or, someone like John Kearns or someone like that, they've come out and done these amazing Edinburgh shows when everyone's gone, whoa, what's this? John had every agent trying, it's like the Hunger Games trying to sign John Kearns. Everyone's trying to kill each other. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. That's where you want to be. You want to be in that position. So just work, get better, and you'll become undeniable. And then if you don't, I'm sorry to say, this is another thing with comedians. I think comedians need to know where their level is. And there's no shame in knowing that. There's no shame in going, yeah, I'm just going to be a really good circuit comic. That's fine. That's a really good job and a really good career. But if that's your level, don't start thinking, oh, why am I not in Hollywood? Why am I not doing, you know what I mean? That's fine. So realisation and hard work is what my advice is.
That was Chris, Katya and Andy. I love that. As you will have heard in the episode before this, if you're a diligent listener, we had Mike Leon, and that was kind of kicking off this series of a bunch of different interviews to do with agents. Honestly, covered so much there. I don't even know what to highlight. From the advantages of going for a smaller agency to how to avoid looking like an idiot in the way you approach people, to when to approach people, to just how the American market works different to the British market, just everything in it. I loved this one. I thought this was amazing. I was really proud of it. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you have, please do take a minute and tweet the guests and tell them thank you. They were so giving with their time. They were so patient with the tech issue that I had at the start. Sorry again, guys. I can't thank them enough, and I can't thank you enough for listening. So, if you'd like to thank any of the guests, all the links are in the show notes, either on my website or in the podcast notes in your podcast player of choice. Really quick one before we go. I'm hoping to do an Edinburgh Fringe leg up day, which will involve PRs, venues, and people who are involved in show production early next year. I'm still trying to sort it out in terms of the venue and the lineups. Please join the Facebook group if you'd be interested in coming down to that. It will be in London. I'm sorry if you're not in London. I can't do it anywhere else. I don't have the budget to do it anywhere else, and also I don't have the budget to travel. So that's the best I can do. But if you can't make it and you would like to ask a question, ask it in the Facebook group and that I will ask it on your behalf. If you can make it, please do come down. It's a great opportunity to network and meet some people you'll be working with if you do the Edinburgh Fringe. Also, do take a minute and please give us a review in iTunes. They really help out. As well as if you could share this podcast with someone you think would get some value out of it, that would be amazingly helpful. If you'd like to thank me, my Twitter is thismademecool, or you can email me at simon.m.caine@gmail.com. All of this is in the show notes, by the way. Don't get your pad out and waste any paper right now. I've got one more episode coming out this year, which is in 2 weeks' time, and then I am off until 2018. I say off, it's 3 days extra I'll be getting out of it because of Christmas. But if you'd like to send me an early Christmas present or birthday present, my birthday's on the 20th of this month, so if you'd like to send me a birthday present or Christmas present, please do. You can do it via PayPal or Patreon on my website. No donation or present, or whatever way you want to look at it, is too big or too small. All of it helps me out. I take days out of paid work to do this, and if you can donate, I'd really appreciate it. I know not everyone can, and I know Christmas is a hard time for everyone financially, but if you can afford £1 or a £5 or a tenner or 50, then I would really appreciate it. Almost forgot. Buy my book. I'm not even going to bother trying to come up with a clever way of saying this. If you're going to donate towards the podcast, if you're going to donate a £5 or more, you can buy my book on Amazon, or you can just donate to me and in the little description say, I was going to donate to the podcast, here's £10, please email me back a copy of your book. And I'll do that. If you just want a copy of the book, it's £5 on Amazon for a digital or £8 on my website for a paperback. Please buy it. It's Christmas round the corner. I'd massively appreciate some merchandise sales. Please do consider becoming a Patreon, because it makes my future planning a lot easier if I have a guaranteed budget per episode. If you are worried that you won't have enough content to listen to over Christmas and you might have to actually talk to your family, God, could you imagine doing that? You can give my other podcast a listen, which is called The Audio Time Capsule. It's where I take a guest, I get them to ask 20 questions, we wait a year, I bring them back on, and then I get them to answer them. I then edit it so they are talking to their past self. Please give it a listen. Please try it out. I would massively appreciate it. Any and all support on my other projects is also really, really helpful. The Ask the Industry podcast and the Audio Time Capsule are Fruit That Got in Gravity's Way productions for the internet. All elements of the Ask the Industry podcast were created by me, Simon Caine. Oh, before I go, I am doing some tour dates at the end of January that are the last couple of ones that I'm doing for the current show, which is Laughter is the Best Placebo. I've got one in Dundee and I've got one in Aberdeen. Dundee is on the 27th and the Aberdeen one one's on the 28th. If you are in the area or you're able to get to that area, please come. All the details are on my website or in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you all in about 2 weeks' time. Bye.